This podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be financial or investment advice. Seek a licensed professional for investment advice about crypto or any other investment. Welcome to another installment of the Blazing Crypto podcast. We are Justin and Brandon, and today I think the movie quote that hopefully most applies to our situation in the market is what they said on The Dark Knight, that the night is darkest just before the dawn. So Justin, if you can stitch together a chart that makes sense, I would certainly love to see it.
I can definitely say it is dark right now. Current darkness for sure.
We are recording on the morning of January 6th. This is our first podcast of the new year 2022. And yeah, the market has been in a bit of a funk, in a deep funk the last couple of days. And so we are all getting our arms and our heads collectively around what's going on, trying to keep everything updated in Discord, some market update videos, some good discussion there. But today in our episode, we are really excited to talk about one of our favorite projects related to one of our favorite coins, and that is Solana and the coin Sol, which if you've been around Justin or I for any length of time, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you've heard us mention that. So today we're going to dive into just a bit of education, information. What is it? What does it do? What category does it live in the blockchain world? And really what is unique and valuable about it? And what can you expect from this project moving forward? Before we dive in, Justin, one thing that I thought about this week, certainly it's our goal on Blazing Crypto to make information as accessible as possible about a pretty complex topic, a complex technology like blockchain. But for sure, we also want to be moving the needle in our knowledge and how much we know. And a lot of times what that looks like for me is I'm reading a tweet thread, I'm reading an article, I'm listening to a podcast, and I understand 50, 60, 70% of what's going on. But there might be 20, 30, or 40% that I need to go sort of brush up on what that means. And just an encouragement here, I remembered a story from high school. My English teacher, Mr. Joyner, was famous for, we'd be reading a book, we'd be working on something, and we'd ask him, Mr. Joyner, what does that word mean? And he would sort of wheel back and grab one of his 1,500 dictionaries, it seemed like, and sort of hold it up to us like, you want to know what the word means, come look it up. And I remember that being super frustrating at the time, but it really was a lifelong lesson of pursuing knowledge, being curious, and not just looking the word up, but even trying to use it in context, right? It's really about building learning, building that kind of growth. And so I would just say, my encouragement is, as you start talking about some of these projects, there's going to be stuff that maybe it's your first time hearing about it. Take that on and go look it up, study it, ask questions about it. Just an encouragement from a lifelong learning perspective. But yeah, let's dive in. So Justin, I know that you were very, very early on Solana, like very early. So when you remember hearing about it first, what caught your interest in Solana?
Well, I think my interest in Solana actually came out of some of my frustrations with other coins. So like Ethereum, for example, I've been big on Ethereum for a number of years, and what I was experiencing is when I was living in the decentralized financial world, and I was testing out some of these new tools. One of the things that I found frustrating about Ethereum was, it took 15 minutes to confirm a transaction. It was, there's higher transaction fees. So all of these things, it's fine for Ethereum, to do that depending on, what it's going to be used for. But that doesn't scale for all the applications in the world, right? There needs to be something that's faster, more efficient, cheaper. So that's kind of what I was looking for. And in, around last spring, I just started looking at other blockchains to see, okay, which ones, like, let's start looking at these blockchains and see, oh, this one's really, really fast, but it's not secure at all, or this one's overly secure and it's very, very slow. So that's kind of what led me to Solana. And then what I really liked about Solana at that time was the healthy balance of security and speed. It wasn't an outlier on that spectrum. And that's, to me, that signaled utility, significant utility. The other thing that caught my eye is Solana almost immediately started having heavy development built on top of it. So, it's a blockchain where a lot of other projects started being built on top of it immediately, and that's a really good sign of adoption. So, yeah, I wanted to jump on that train early.
Yeah, that's awesome. So maybe we should have started here, but tell people what Solana is. Like, what kind of blockchain is it? Connect the dots for us on that.
Yeah, I was trying not to get into all the details of why I liked it, but so that can be a really confusing thing for people because there's so many cryptocurrencies out there. And I like to describe it like it's like layers. And these blockchains, we actually use that terminology, layer one blockchain. And all that means is, there's tons of products out there like compound finance, YFI finance. A lot of them are financial instruments, but it's an individual project that allows you to do some sort of function, take a loan, lend out your money and earn interest, whatever it may be. Well, those are individual projects. And all of those individual projects are being built on top of a blockchain like Ethereum or Solana. So you could say Ethereum and Solana are the base layer that other technologies are built on top of. So that's kind of a broad definition of what Solana is. But think of it like a network that a bunch of cool stuff can be built on top of.
Yeah, and it's been fun to try to explain some of these products and projects to just people that you're engaging with. I tried to explain it like it's like any function that a bank would perform. You mentioned decentralized finance. It's like from a lending, from an interest, or a staking, which we'll talk more about later. All of these things have been available from centralized finance. It's just that the bank is the central authority. And now, with blockchains like Solana, decentralized means the bank is really the technology. And so we, the people, really benefit from that. So it's great to hear Solana is one of those layer one, base layer blockchain technology. So just a little bit of history. Solana launched the coin Sol that launched in April of 2020. And boy, things move very, very fast in this space. That feels like it was not that long ago. But it went from, just a year ago, so January of 2021, the coin was under $2. I think I pegged it at 188 exactly a year ago this week. And it hit 260 in September of 2021. That's a lot. That's a big gain. Without getting into all the market dynamics of what makes coins go wild, what specifically about Solana has proven to be so valuable? And not just that it would grow, but that it would grow so exponentially.
Yeah, I think, a big thing about that price movement, it simply mirrors what's called a network effect, right? So a network effect is essentially the more users that come into a network, they add value to the network, right? And each new user adds more value. And so a lot of times in cryptocurrency, as a network is being built out, there's more projects being built on it, more people are using it, the value of that coin scales up as more people come in. And a big part of that, obviously, is because, to use these projects that are being built on top of Solana, you need to buy Solana, right? And the same thing for Ethereum. But that's what makes it grow so much is it's simply the price is just reflecting the actual growth of the Solana ecosystem. So that's one aspect of it. The other thing is just I guess I would say the uniqueness. Like to me, going back to what I said earlier, Solana on that, let's say a bell curve of blockchains, and over here we have high security, but it's really slow, and over on the other side it's really fast, but it's not secure at all. Solana was a healthy balance. So I think those two things working in tandem, like that is what drew a lot of the development and a lot of the just adoption in general. But yeah, definitely the price. That gives credit to the adoption all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'll give voice to the situation we had in September, October, where the NFT boom really, in addition to hitting the total market and crypto, really hit Solana, really heavily, and a lot of people that had been paying, pretty heavy gas fees, transaction fees on NFTs. So think about every time you go to sell something, you're having to pay $80, $100, $150, $200 per transaction just as the fee. Really came over to Solana and sort of found a little bit better situation with lower fees, faster transactions. So getting into that a little bit more, want to set up kind of a both-sided conversation here. There are certainly upsides to Solana. You mentioned speed and scalability, and I want you to talk about those a little more. But let's play kind of an upside and a downside. Are there downsides to Solana? I know specifically as we were preparing for this, we had a couple people in the Blazing community actually ask us, hey, I know we all like Solana, but like sort of what's the quote unquote bear case? Like what are the downsides, just so that we're not kind of blinded by only what we like. So talk about the upside, but also are there any downsides that you'd want to acknowledge or that you're concerned about?
Yeah. So actually start with the downsides. So the downsides, and I don't care like what cryptocurrency you're into, everything has a downside. So it's really important to talk about those downsides and just be like, here's what they are, and kind of here's how we think it'll play out. So for Solana, to me, the biggest downside is network stability. So let me just a brief story on that. So, there was, I can't remember if it was 24 or 48 hours, earlier, or in just fall 2021, where the whole network for Solana went down, meaning like you couldn't send a Solana transaction, and it was for a 24-hour period. That type of latency or outage, it just can't, that can't continue happening. And it hasn't happened a lot. That was the one moment where it was down for a long time. And there's other times where it's been, congested a little bit, with transactions, latency and stuff. And it just has to do with the number of people using the network. So it's, it'll bump into some scaling issues every once in a while. So that's to me, that's one big downside. The other thing is, and this is more of like a perception. It technically is a downside, but I'm not worried about it, is a lot of people that are in the crypto world, they really knock Solana because of the concentrated venture capital that basically helped get the project going. They're saying, okay, these VCs have too much of the wealth, too much of the Solana, and therefore they control the network too much. It's not distributed enough. And like the reason that's such a concern for a lot of cryptocurrencies is anytime you have a scam in crypto, you see that. There's a high concentration of wealth with very few people, and they scammed the market, and they got out with a lot of money from people that invested in it because they were able to control it. So what that doesn't mean, though, is that anytime you see high concentration of VC wealth, that's going to be a scam. Like that's just not the case. I was on Twitter a few weeks ago, and the the CEO, the guy that actually started Solana, he was addressing this because it's kind of floating around all over Twitter, and he said, "Hey, in the beginning, if we could have had a more distributed way of raising funds, like we would have gladly done that. But obviously, you're going to move forward with the project once you raise the money, and so he sees it as, yeah, it would have been nice to have it more distributed, but it doesn't mean like it's a bad project at all."
Yeah, I mean, Satoshi, when he started Bitcoin, had the benefit of time because no one, from a distribution standpoint, no one was looking for Bitcoin. So it didn't really matter how fast he went. With Solana, you're jumping on a moving train. You got to get a product launched. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Anything else about the downside, or connect that to? But on the other hand, what Solana is really well purposed to deliver.
Yeah, another thing you're going to hear if you start researching on this, or like, especially if you dive into like Reddit or Twitter, you're going to run into, Solana isn't secured. Like the network itself isn't secure. It's too centralized. And that's an argument that will never go away for basically any other blockchain except Bitcoin. And a lot of the reasons that, that exists is because Bitcoin is the most decentralized protocol, and it will always be the most decentralized. It will also always be the slowest and the most expensive, right? So, there's trade-offs to that, but that's okay because Bitcoin, like its use case isn't gaming, and that's perfectly fine. So,
are we talking about Bitcoin or Ethereum, just to clarify?
Bitcoin and Ethereum. Like
okay.
I was using the most extreme case there of like
Right.
Bitcoin being, like Bitcoin, for example, is the most decentralized protocol. And a lot of the pro Bitcoiners that like hate everything else, like they're knocking Ethereum because it's too centralized. And then the Ethereum people over here are saying, "Oh, we're not too centralized. Stop saying that." And then they go and they're like, "Hey, you Solana people, you're too centralized." So it's like an argument that like everybody's throwing back and forth with each other. But the reality is, if I look at all of the layer one blockchains, Solana is not even remotely centralized compared to a lot of these layer ones. It is more centralized than Ethereum, right? But like, that's fine. That doesn't scare me. That just means it's going to be used for certain things.
Yeah, that's good. So you mentioned speed and scaling, speed from a transaction standpoint. I guess, connect the dots at like a practical level. Like why would you and I care as consumers, as customers, as investors? Why would our listeners care about speed and scaling? What would they run into or want to do where that's going to really be something that they need?
Yeah, most of the time, like the end users of products, they don't care, right? Like you're not going to really think about that. I think about it from an investing standpoint because I see like the developers care, right? The people that are building products that will serve millions of people, they care about speed and security and that healthy balance. But the biggest thing, like from an end user standpoint, speed, like if you look at these different layer ones, Ethereum having higher security and lower speed, that what I see when I see that is, okay, therefore Ethereum has the opportunity to serve a larger financial market where there's larger transactions, where fees don't matter as much and security really matters. Or, smart contracts for, all kinds of smart contracts that will come out in the future where like you and I can have an agreement on a smart contract and that can actually be held up in court, right? There's more security around that. And it's okay to pay a few $100s in a smart contract fee because you need the security. So I see Ethereum playing in that world and serving that space. Whereas, for Solana, okay, like it can be used in gaming. other things like that are smaller, like millions and millions of really tiny transactions, smaller transactions, where security just isn't as important, and you need the speed to make it work. Like think of it in that way, and then you say, okay, gaming is a big use case, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But anywhere where you need a lot of transactions or a lot of people doing little things where you just don't need security, like it's Fort Knox,
Right.
that's going to be the use case.
Yeah, it's sort of a difference between, it makes all the sense in the world if there is a blockchain product on Ethereum that's super robust, super secure, and actually that if on Ethereum handles a real estate transaction where you're buying a home. Well, it's like paying $200 to do that entire transaction. That makes sense. But to have to go and like buy a shirt for $70 or $50 and to pay a $200 transaction fee, I think that's a good way to understand all these microtransactions. You don't need that level of robustness and security, if you will.
One thing there, a practical use case that's happening right now, for example, if you're an artist and you want to create your own NFT collection, okay, you have two options. Well, you've got more than two, but I'll just present the two. Go to Ethereum and launch your NFT project. Let's say, you've got this beautiful artwork that you want to sell. Well, you're going to have to pay like several $100s to get it listed, to pay the transaction fee, just to get your art listed. Then the person that is going to buy your art, they have to pay you for the art. They also have to pay several $100s in fees to even get the art. And then, if they want to move that around to a different wallet, there's a bunch more money that they're going to have to do for that. So from an NFT standpoint, right now, Ethereum is not a great solution. And so what those people are doing instead is, hey, I can build on Solana. I just want to sell my art. And they can list it and everything, and it only costs a few pennies or a few dollars max, depending on what they're doing. And so it's just a much better place, like for the artist to be able to actually sell their artwork. Because then the person that wants to buy it, they don't have to pay hundreds of dollars in fees and transaction fees to get it.
Right. Yeah, one thing you've been saying for a while now is Ethereum is really, really great for handling large commercial investment transactions. Again, in the future, big real estate transactions, supply chain work, where chain of custody is everything. But let's talk about, maybe for consumers, maybe for people like you and me, where a developer wants to reach the masses, right, with a product. What are some of the best use cases for Solana right now, but also as we look into the near future?
So right now, the big two use cases are mostly for, I'll just say trading, like the decentralized finance side of things, and then the NFTs. And I'm going to put gaming in with NFTs because those two fit really well together. That's essentially, if you count the financial instruments and the NFT gaming space, that's, I don't know the actual number, but that's like, let's just say 99.999% of all of the current use cases. And obviously there'll be more that get put into there. I just forgot your question. Sorry. I started talking about it.
Basically exploring the practical use cases of Solana, like what are its best uses now, but also into the future that you can see.
So I'll dive into those two a little bit. So like for the financial side of things, just to give you a few examples, when I was playing around with Ethereum decentralized finance, I was looking at the like compound finance, for example. And if you wanted to take out, a $1,000 loan using your Ethereum or your Bitcoin as collateral, you're going to have to pay $300 in fees just to do that. Whereas on Solana, that same loan you could take out and it would cost you 14 cents. So that's just one real example of that use case right there. It made it, Solana is much more attractive for just people that, they're not playing around with millions and millions of dollars, but they still want to, take their their capital and make it go to work for them in the most efficient way. That's the biggest thing in the DeFi space, is for us, little fish, to be able to play with some of these cool instruments that if they only existed on Ethereum, we'd be priced out of them. From a gaming perspective in the NFT space, that is still very new. I mean, Solana, the whole Solana NFT space really launched in August 2021. And so we're not even 6 months into that yet. But there's a lot of development happening there. There's a whole lot of scams, right? I want to make sure I say that, just because anytime you have explosive growth in a brand new space, there's going to be a lot of predators that come in and try to take advantage of people. So you got to know what you're doing. But the main thing there is these games that are being built on Solana, they are, a lot of people will use the term play to earn, where you can play a video game and actually earn tokens doing that, and then take that and sell it. Or you can lease out your NFT to other people who want to play a game. There's a lot of different aspects there. And really the scalability of Solana sets it up to where really the sky is the limit on the gaming space. They're going to be able to, they're building a lot of games right now, and some of them are very complex. Some of them are very simple. But it's cool to see the space growing like that and to kind of be able to get ahead of some of those projects.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing that as you and I began to, like you said, you were seeing a problem in the market. Ethereum was really strong and really robust, but not very fast, and it was very expensive. And I remember there's a famous chart that you and I looked at that compared a lot of smart contract chains, how fast they were, how strong they were, how many network nodes they had, how many projects were being developed on it. And that was really one of the first times we were like, oh man, the value, not only the opportunity ahead for Solana, but where Solana has already come, and how many thousands of transactions per second Solana can handle. And a lot of those transactions are less than a penny, or like you said, 2, 5, 10, 12 cents a piece. So think about this from a standpoint, if we can sort of look into the future for a minute. We're in our mid-30s. I'm still going to say mid-30s, even though I just ticked up another year in the age category. But think about your favorite game that you played either growing up or as a teen, college, or even now. I think I'll use Zelda as an example, way back in the Super Nintendo days. Playing a normal game like that on a console that's not really connected to the internet, we don't think about the fact of how many, I'll use air quotes, transactions we're actually making. But if let's just imagine that 1 million people are simultaneously playing Zelda, and every time you swap a tunic, or every time you buy a new version of something, every time you save a level, whatever, right? Every time you exchange anything, or if you will, write new data to the game, I mean, those are all transactions. And we don't think of it that way, right? But it's a scenario where if every single time you do something in a game, it costs you $50, $80, $100, or $150, I mean, the thing never even gets off the ground, right? It does, it's a non-starter. And so that's really when we were seeing the future on things like NFTs, where I want 10 or 15 or 500 of those things, and every time I move them around, I don't want to pay $200 in fees and gas. In games, I don't want to play a game and do one thing and be done for the month because I don't have the money to pay these fees. And so, again, it's in one sense, when you look at it, the case for Solana is so obvious, it hurts. It's how would this thing not be successful? And Justin, I think we've talked about, for as much as it has done for decentralized finance, for as much as it has done for NFTs, personally, I think the best use case, in the sense of compared to the other blockchains, the best use case for Solana really is this gaming space. And I could see Solana really taking off once gaming is actually sort of alive and developed and a little more mature in the space.
Yeah, I agree totally. I say the other thing there on the gaming side of things is specifically like this isn't just a theory about this decentralized gaming aspect. Like EA Sports came out and said several months ago, decentralized gaming, play to earn, is the future for gaming. Right, and they're an industry leader that is, I don't know how to rank gaming companies. I know EA Sports is near the top. I'll tell you that much, and they know what they're talking about. So we're still very, very early, but it is really cool to see the big players outside of the crypto space to say, yeah, this is legitimate. This is going to be a big deal.
So suffice it to say, there's a lot more room to grow and advance for Solana in the space. To that note, Justin, let's just have a little fun here for a second, and we'll try to be a little bit faster on these points here to get to our time. But let's talk future value. We'll have a little fun. In the next 4 years, 3 to 4 to 5 years, what do you think we can expect from Solana, from Sol, the coin, from a market cap, from a price standpoint? Let's have a little fun with that. What do you think?
I think the most realistic thing to expect, if Solana's growth continues to happen like it's been happening, I would say Solana in another 4 years is going to be where Ethereum is today. I'd say it's like safe to say that. So from there, you're looking at, Solana being $3,000 or $4,000. This morning it's $150. I know that sounds crazy, asinine, like that doesn't sound achievable. But the funny thing is in this crypto space, when you have emerging technology like Solana, like it can grow and scale very quickly. So I think that's the most realistic thing. The other thing I'll say about that though is really, Brandon, what your question is you're actually asking me how much will Solana adopt in the next 4 years? And I don't have any stinking clue like what that is. But I can say, okay, what are some coins that have kind of been down that road, and what does that look like, and how much money would that equivalently, like what is the equivalent of that for Solana? And that's really what it would look like.
That's good. One thing I wanted to pull out that we talked about even in our planning for this conversation is, in one sense, these blockchains are in competition with each other for users, for adoption, for network growth and effect. But don't think of it as only one smart contract blockchain can really make it. For instance, we would even say Solana is not really a competitor to Ethereum. Like, in other words, Solana winning, this is not zero sum at all. Solana winning does not mean it has to be quote unquote the Ethereum killer. And you'll hear that language, what's the next Ethereum killer? That's not really the case. What it's more like is Ethereum was the first mover. Ethereum was the first one to be in the space, and so it sort of got everything. Yep. And now, so I had a little audio issue with my computer there, so sorry if that phased out. But the point is, it's not the best use case for everything, and so now you're having smart contract blockchains like Solana step in and actually take in and specialize in certain areas. So again, don't think of it as only one of these things is going to make it, but certainly there are, at this point, getting to be dozens of these kinds of things, and we really think Solana is at the front of the line, the first wave, whatever you want to say there. So we're going to talk about, and I'll say this as a future tease, decentralized finance and staking and farming and yield and interest. We're going to save that for a future conversation about decentralized finance as its own conversation, because that is an entire world to itself. We will talk about NFTs and gaming more in the future. We do have some conversations that go on about NFTs and gaming on our Discord, which has been pretty fun. But for now, Justin, if people listen to this podcast and decide they want in on Solana. They want to buy Solana. Tell us a couple of places where people can buy Sol.
The best place that I recommend to people to buy is Coinbase. So you can buy Solana on Coinbase. And I would say the second best would be like FTX US. So you can buy it there as well. They have a mobile app. You can also buy it on Voyager. We talk a lot about Voyager. The only downside is Voyager does not allow you to send Solana. You can buy it there and trade it for other things, but they're not going to allow you to send it out of that wallet. So I typically recommend if you want to buy Solana, don't buy it on Voyager, because then if you want to send it somewhere, you're going to have to trade it for something, and that's not going to be fun. Coinbase definitely is the number one spot.
Very good. Oh man, you mentioned FTX US. I feel like we would be remiss in saying this. I don't know how this slipped through the episode without being mentioned. If you watch Major League Baseball, frankly, if you watch TV at all, you probably have heard the name FTX. This is an exchange started by Sam Bankman-Fried, who just got listed as one of Forbes 40 under 40 most influential men, whatever. We are big fans of Sam, and Sam, in the products that Sam is building, Sam's blockchain of choice is Solana, and that's something that's been a boon to its growth, but probably more actually an indicator of what Solana has to offer. So one of the most successful men in crypto that's building at probably the most rapid speed of any development company in the world pick Solana as their blockchain of choice. So I don't know how we got 35 minutes into this episode without mentioning that, but I think that's a fairly important point. Justin, anything that you want to round out the discussion with before we send everybody off?
No, I would just encourage people to really dive in and research and learn. Like a lot of times, if you're curious about, hey, what other blockchains are out there? Like, there's so many good resources and pieces of information to help you guys learn about this stuff. I didn't sit down one day with some like teacher that like taught me this stuff, and neither did you, Brandon. It's just we just got in and we started learning, kind of like what you started this podcast with talking about, like and the value, like the hours poured into that stuff. Is really valuable to me now, and it helps me navigate the space and kind of like have confidence in, knowing what projects that I really want to learn more about and then invest in. So there's so much to learn.
Yeah, we've been hearing a lot about Web 3 lately, and maybe people don't know exactly what that is, what that means, or like, what was Web 2? Like, I didn't know there was a Web 2. The same way, my parting shot here, think about the first time you ever signed on to the internet. MSN, AOL, back in the mid to late 90s. There's not a lot you can do. You can go to a website and consume information. Maybe you could listen to audio or watch video. With Web 2, we went social, but we also went mobile. So think about applications like Uber. So think of all the complexity involved in, quote unquote, taking an Uber, finding an Uber. You've got location, you've got payment, you've got navigation, you've got simultaneous engagement in real time. You have selecting a driver and geolocation. I mean, all of that stuff was not possible 5 years previous to that, right? And so I think the thing I would sort of send you away with is we are very fascinated about this whole space. I know smart contracts sounds super nerdy, but really the point is, blockchain is going to be able to handle more complex things in quote unquote Web 3 that simply in the last 10 or 15 years have not been possible. So I mentioned, right now, a real estate transaction involves like 4 or 5 different people, title search, attorney fees for recording things, and you've got, all these other things have to be done and legally stamped off and signed off on. Imagine that there's a product on Solana or Ethereum that handles that entire transaction. Instead of paying thousands of dollars, maybe you pay hundreds of dollars, and you don't need 5 different people to be sort of pulling money as the middleman. So again, that's why we're so excited, and we hope that you'll explore this space more. There's a lot going on, and we are in rapid development in this space. As we head out, encouragement to check out blazingcrypto.io/join if you want to go deeper with us. You can sign up there and join our Discord, where we deliver all of our content that's not found on this podcast. But for Justin, I'm Brandon. Have a good day, guys. We will talk to you later. For more information, check out our website at blazingcrypto.io. Additionally, if you have friends that are new to crypto, share our trailhead videos from our website, which is a great way to get introduced to crypto.